Number 7. Paul Craig made his UFC debut against Luis Enrique da Silva at UFC on Fox 22, where he won the fight by an armbar in the second round. He is a jiu-jitsu based fighter who has won 8 of his 9 fights by submission. With the UFC light heavyweight division lacking in contenders, I believe Paul Craig will definitely make noise in the division and will 100% make progress in the UFC rankings in 2017. Number 6. Iain Mick was given a shot in the UFC after he defeated former World Series of Fighting welterweight champion Husima Palhares by TKO in the first round impressively. He made his UFC debut against Jordan Meehan at UFC 206, where in the fight he showed his well-rounded game, mixing his striking with his wrestling to get the unanimous decision victory. With his first win in the UFC, it will be interesting to see how he progresses with tougher competition in 2017. Number 5. After winning 4 fights in Invicta FC, Alexa Grasso was given the opportunity to fight in the UFC and made a UFC debut against Heather Jo Clark at UFC Fight Night 98, where she won the fight by unanimous decision. Although she has won 1 fight in the UFC, she showed that she is a well-rounded fighter who has the potential to progress through the UFC strawweight rankings. She is an exciting fighter, and I believe if she is able to get a few wins together, she will definitely be in title contention in 2017. Number 4. Mick Eagle was offered to fight in the UFC after he was discovered by UFC President Dana White on his show looking for a fight. He made his UFC debut against Mike Jackson at UFC Fight Night 82, where he won the fight by submission via a rear naked choke in the first round. He next defeated CM Punk by submission again via a rear naked choke in the first round at UFC 203, and most recently defeated Sage Northcutt by submission via a rear naked choke in the second round at UFC on Fox 22. He has done well so far in the UFC, and it will be interesting to see how he does against tougher competition in 2017. Number 3. After Sergio Pettis pulled out of his fight with Louis Smolka due to an injury, Brandon Moreno stepped in and made his UFC debut on very short notice against Louis Smolka at UFC Fight Night 96. In the fight, Brandon Moreno won by submission via a guillotine choke in the first round. He most recently faced Ryan Benoit at the Ultimate Fighter 24 finale, where he won the fight by a split decision. With 2 great wins in the UFC, I believe he has the potential to become a serious contender in the UFC flyweight division in 2017. Number 2. After Michael Chiesa pulled out of his fight with Tony Ferguson due to an injury, Lando Vannata stepped in and made his UFC debut on very short notice against Tony Ferguson at UFC Fight Night 91. In the fight, he looked amazing with his movement, throwing wild spinning kicks and unorthodox strikes inside the octagon. He eventually got submitted by a Darce choke in the second round. He recently made his return and faced John Makdessi at UFC 206, where in the fight, he landed a crazy wheel kick, knocking John Makdessi out in the first round. He is a super talented fighter who has all the tools to become a serious contender in 2017. Number 1. Cris Cyborg is the current Invicta FC featherweight champion and made a long-awaited UFC debut against Leslie Smith in a catchweight bout at UFC 198. In the fight, Cris Cyborg landed heavy shots early, dropping Leslie Smith, and eventually finished her by TKO in the first round. She next faced Lena Landsberg in a catchweight bout at UFC Fight Night 95. In the fight, Cris Cyborg brutalized Lena Landsberg from the start, bloodying her up, and eventually finished her by TKO in the second round. She is a violent fighter who always puts on a great performance whenever she fights. It will be very interesting to see how she does against tougher competition in 2017.